On this edition of Independent Sources, a time for celebration, awful concern, as New York City prepares to implement the country's largest municipal ID program.
It's going to be a very secure system for who gets this ID. And all of our residents will be empowered by getting this. I think we really have a lot to gain.
And a rare religious relationship in the Bronx. Muslims and Jews learn to share a house of worship.
Out of this entire world, we are the only mosque and synagogue in the same building in this entire world, including Israel.
Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to Independent Sources, bringing you news from New York's ethnic and immigrant communities. I'm Zyphus Lebrun. New York City is in the process of rolling out the largest municipal ID program in the United States. Mayor Bill de Blasio signaled his commitment to the program during his first State of the City address in February. The cards are supposed to serve undocumented immigrants, as well as the homeless, former prisoners, and members of the LGBTQ community who have trouble acquiring their government-issued IDs. Similar programs have already been implemented in San Francisco and Connecticut, but there are critics who think that this plan may do more harm than good. I spoke with immigration advocate Valeria Treves about the pros and cons of the ID program. So, Valeria, thank you very much for being in studio with us today.
Sure, thank you, Zyphus.
All right, so let's talk about these municipal IDs. You know, who exactly will benefit from these municipal IDs?
It's an exciting project. The municipal ID is going to be an ID that's going to attract a wide range of community members and New Yorkers that want to have the joy, the pride, and the dignity that's going to come along with having this municipal ID. There's a range of groups that have a difficult time accessing government-issued ID for a variety of reasons, and they stand to benefit a lot. But absolutely anybody is going to be eligible for our municipal ID.
So who are these groups that are specifically being targeted?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that's been key to us as advocate is to make our coalition as broad as possible. And so this ID is important for senior citizens, for youth, for homeless communities, for immigrants, for people with arrest records or conviction records. Anyone who's had a hard time accessing an ID is going to stand to benefit.
So, Valeria, a fellow immigration advocate, Javier Valdez from Make the Road New York, has expressed concern that the ID cards may become more of a scarlet letter of sorts. Do you share those concerns?
I do want to point out we're not the first city to roll this out. So this has been rolled out in at least 10 to 12 cities that I know of. So we have other cities to learn from examples. Immigrants in other cities have been happy to get this ID. People have gone to their municipalities to enroll, so it does pose a benefit to them. At the same time, here in New York City, we may have particular concerns, but I think that we are working very closely with both the City Council and with the administration to make sure that all city agents, including, for example, the police, respect this ID, right? That they understand that this ID is not for an undocumented person, but absolutely anybody who wants to get this ID. And again, a big goal of our coalition work has been to make the ID as appealing as possible so that everybody will get it. So that you'll get one, I'll get one, all of your viewers will get one, and therefore it's not really a scarlet letter.
So what are some of the things that you guys are going to do to make it more appealing to everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for example, Metro card technology is going to be changing soon, right? So we're not going to be stuck to those swipes that don't work forever. And I know that the MTA is now looking into technology where you do a swipe. Not a swipe, but a
scan?
Like a scan thing. So we're thinking about maybe incorporating that into the ID. There's been a lot of conversations about making an ID that's useful for banking institutions and other financial institutions, which is also a big need. There's been discussions about making this ID accessible for discounts at city cultural institutions. Just for access to more city institutions, both public and private, and that's appealing to everybody.
The other issue that has kind of come up in some of the discussions is this issue of security. You know, I'll quote somebody else for you. You know, Ira Melman of the Federation of American Immigration Reform has said, he said, quote, one of the reasons that 9/11 terrorists were so successful was because they had access to official identification. I mean, you may not necessarily be associated on that kind of a level. But what do you think about, comments like that? Do you think that people will be scared away because of concerns such as that?
IDs are out there. We have state IDs. I don't think we can live paralyzed that someone's going to get a city ID that shouldn't be getting it. This is a government-issued ID. The city government is going to be very serious about the requirements that it develops and that it has in place for people to get an ID. Documents are going to be checked. You are going to have to prove your identity. You are going to have to prove your residence. And it's not just going to be issued to anybody. I think it's going to be a very secure system for who gets this ID. And all of our residents will be empowered by getting this. I think we really have a lot to gain.
So, Valeria, another concern coming with the issuance of these municipal IDs is this idea of whether or not the applicants' identities will be protected, their information will be protected. What's being done to ensure that these folks' identities are protected?
We have thought about this a lot, and we really want to protect the privacy of absolutely anybody and everybody that wants to get this ID. Once an applicant submits their application requirements, such as their proof of ID or the proof of residence, to the city and is deemed that this person can get an ID, the city will not retain any of those records, not the original or not the copy. So people's privacy is respected in that way, in the sense that the city will not retain any other documents. The other important thing to know is that the city cannot turn over any records of who has this ID to anybody else, whether that be a private or public or federal institution. There's nobody that can foil this data and get a whole list of who has this ID. So we've had a lot of conversations about this. As advocates, we've come to the administration and we said, if you're going to make this program effective, you really have to protect the privacy of the people that are getting this ID. And the way that the bill was drafted, and as it was introduced on Thursday, currently those protections are in place. So we're very happy with that. And anybody that's following this should feel confident that moving forward, their identity will be protected as they get this ID.
Now, the mayor first brought this whole idea of the municipal ID up during his State of the City address in February. It's April. It's already in the city council. That speaks to a serious impetus behind this. What kind of support is this municipal ID getting?
Yeah, I mean, this ID has support from all ends. The city council is into it and the administration's into it. Our city council member, actually from my district, Daniel Drum, was the lead sponsor, along with Carlos Menchaca from Brooklyn, and they co-introduced last Thursday. There's going to be a hearing later on this month, and New Yorkers from all walks of life can weigh in and comment. But also the administration has shown themselves to be clearly engaged in this issue. It was a campaign promise. I think it's important for de Blasio and his administration to come through in this, and de Blasio has said that he wants this in place by the end of the year.
Do you think that this is sort of one of those tentpole issues that the mayor will say, hey, listen, this is one of the things I wanted, and now I've accomplished this?
Absolutely, in terms of what he's promising to the immigrant community, this was one of the top things. So this is not only for immigrants. I think this has been important in his messaging. I really think that this ID also gets at the idea of the tale of two cities. A lot of the people that have trouble accessing government-issued ID are poor people, whether they're homeless or they're seniors, youth, immigrants, you name it. There's a lot of poverty in this group. And having access to this ID facilitates access to so many things, all sorts of government buildings. People can enter them freely, anything from Department of Education buildings like schools, some parks and recs stuff like swimming and this and that, you need an ID. All sorts of government places that you can access through this ID. For low-wage workers, it's also very important so they can access work sites, so they can access buildings, so they can get into jobs. So not only is it a promise for the immigrant community, I think it's really uplifting the whole bottom sector of our community that needs access to IDs.
Now, you mentioned that the mayor said he wanted this to be done by year end. Is it likely that this will happen? Will we be seeing this by, December of this year, or maybe early next year, do you think?
I do think it's likely. Like I said, he's had it in his mind all along. He's appointed our new Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, Nisha Argawal, to be one of her first tasks for the years. So she's already shown a lot of commitment. She's already met with advocates, and she has a plan to get it implemented. The idea is that the Office of Operations of the mayor is going to be the one developing and running the system, but the distribution sites are going to be very wide. So people are going to be able to get these IDs at parks, at schools, HRA, places where the public generally goes to access a broad range of services are going to be set up so that people can access those IDs there.
Now, will there be a very extensive campaign, an education campaign, as regards to information such as this in the future?
Yeah, I think we are going to be reaching out to all sorts of communities to let them know that the ID is available. Those that have had difficulty accessing government-issued IDs, but just the public in general. And the more benefits that we attach to the ID, the more people are going to want it.
All right, Valeria,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being with us.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation.
Still to come on the show, Passover without potatoes. Before that, Abby Shola has some other news.
Thanks, Zyphus. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic and community media. El Diario La Prensa reports that Latino women are the most affected by the nation's gender salary gap. The paper published a series of reports highlighting how Latinas have the lowest salaries among women. Women who work full-time currently earn 77 cents for every dollar that men earn. According to the Institute for Women's Policy Research, the median earnings for a Latina are a little over $500 weekly, while white women earn over $700 and African American women more than $600. Recently, President Obama signed 2 executive orders to encourage equal pay for women, while Republicans blocked the Senate bill to close the salary gap. From the Mott Haven Herald, students at schools in Mott Haven aren't warming up to the city's new school meals. Since New York City schools began making healthier food, many students in the Bronx neighborhood stopped participating in the school lunch program. Data from the Office of School Foods shows that the number of students who eat school food dropped by over 200 students from 2011 to 2012. Experts and parents say since many students aren't used to eating vegetables at home, they aren't interested in trying them at school. A group called the Bronx Health Reach is working with the schools to educate parents and children on the benefits of the new lunches. The Korea Times has highlighted a new study that finds that Korea is now suffering from brain drain. The International Institute for Management Development, IMD, finds that Korea ranks 37 out of 60 countries that are seeing highly skilled science and engineering graduates leave their home country. Korea scored a 4.63 on the brain drain index last year. That reflects a strong tendency for highly educated individuals to leave. Experts say Korea's poor research environment is the main reason for the problem. And finally, The Forward profiled a new magazine geared towards fashionable Orthodox Jewish women. Hadar magazine offers fashion and lifestyle coverage for modern-thinking Orthodox women. The leaders behind the publication say they created the magazine because their community needed it. In the past, the only other options were secular women's magazines or ultra-Orthodox magazines that don't often publish photos of women because of religious principles. The magazine publishes stories on how to dress modest yet fashionable, budgeting for holiday planning, and interacting in a secular workplace. Those were just a few headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. Independent Sources will be back right after this.
Thanks for staying tuned. Monday, April 14th marked the eve of the Jewish holiday, Passover. During the entire week of Passover, Jews are not supposed to eat leavened bread or foods made with wheat, barley, rye, spelt, or oats, unless those foods are labeled kosher for Passover. As a substitute, potatoes have become an essential and ubiquitous carbohydrate. But for those looking for a lighter alternative, Aviva Kanov, author of the award-winning cookbook, The No Potato Passover, has found a low-carb, creative way to enjoy the holiday without the starchy staple. Sarah Pizon found out what inspired some of her innovative recipes.
Aviva, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me here.
So, No Potato Passover is the name of your cookbook. But let's just clarify something. Can we eat potatoes during Passover?
Definitely yes.
So what was the meaning behind this cookbook?
A lot of the Jewish population can't eat, they definitely can't eat wheat, but they can't eat any grains or anything like that. So what most people end up eating is mainly potatoes. So it turns into 8 days, 24 meals of like only potatoes. And I got sick of them one year. And I'm like, you know what? What would happen if we didn't use one potato this Passover? And I challenged myself along with my family. And after I pulled my mom off the floor, you know, from like, she thought we were gonna all die of starvation. It'll be like the next potato famine. I was like, you know what? Let me just see what else is out there. And I remember going to the grocery store for the first time without the potato tunnel vision, and I felt like I was in Wizard of Oz, you know, where all of a sudden the world was in color, and there were beets and eggplants and squash and all kinds of beautiful vegetables that I never paid attention to. And that was really exciting to see the results from when you remove the #1 Passover staple. It turns into a whole world full of different foods that I would have never even dreamed up.
And so what are you suggesting people replace potatoes with?
So what I tell people, especially if they're a little bit nervous, because you know, Jews are very traditional, and they get carried away a little bit in their tradition, and they're like, well, you know, my ancestors have been eating kugel for thousands of years, so we don't want to give that up. So for instance, here I have a spaghetti squash kugel, which is called the salt and pepper kugel instead of the typical potato kugel. And people love French fries, so instead of the French fries, I have Cajun carrot fries. And instead of another favorite, mashed potatoes, we have mashed parsnips with cauliflower right here. So, you know, the best thing is you're disguising vegetables and you're eating food that people are already familiar with. So it's kind of a win-win.
And what has inspired you to create those dishes?
I think that, you know, I was definitely giving myself the challenge of not eating potatoes. I was trying to substitute my favorite potato dishes and try to substitute them with something else. And then I do travel all over the world. So I really try to get inspired from all these other countries. And, you know, Italy has amazing cuisine, and France, Ecuador, India, like all these places that I've been, and I'm excited by their cuisine and by different, you know, you go to the market there and everything looks completely different. It's so exciting. So I want to like bring all that stuff home with me and, you know, teach it to people who aren't as lucky as me to travel all over.
So are you incorporating spices to
Totally.
basically change those dishes?
Yeah, but even just substituting like potatoes for a sweet potato or a carrot or a spaghetti squash or quinoa instead of rice, spaghetti squash instead of pasta. You know, there's so many alternatives that people don't really think about.
This is also like a healthier alternative, right?
Totally. You know what? That wasn't my intention, but it turns out when you're not eating as many potatoes and you're not eating pasta or wheat because you can't anyways, you end up eating a lot more vegetables, much more low carb. Their meals are lighter, you know, so that was kind of a byproduct that was exciting for people.
And so let's go back to some of these dishes here. Are they hard to prepare? Are they easy
Not
to prepare?
at all. I'm like the laziest person in the world, so I don't do anything that takes more than like 10 minutes to do.
So they're quick.
So they're really, really quick, really easy. I mean, I think that's the whole philosophy is instead of, you know, I didn't want to write a pretentious cookbook. That's not my personality. I didn't want to be like, marinate a peacock feather for 4 weeks, you know? So these are just really accessible vegetables that people would have anyways, spices that people would have anyways, just quick and easy.
It smells incredible. I just want to get a taste, but we'll wait for that. And tell us a little bit about this last dish over here.
These are lemongrass meatballs made with ground chicken that I found at a Balinese bridge festival, my second day in Bali. Wow. They had this huge festival and everyone was out, you know, everyone was in the parade, the mayor was there, it was really exciting, and they had all these food booths, and someone was making lemongrass meatballs for a competition, and I thought that was so cool, you know, because I love meatballs, you know, and everyone I know likes meatballs, but
we all do.
made in, you know, but there's so, you know, traveling the world, it's basically like, how many ways are there to make meatballs, you know, or wontons. So this was a meatball that I tried, and also they're lighter because they use ground chicken. And I wanted to make them accessible for people back at home who don't want to spend $10 a pound for lemongrass. So instead of using lemongrass, I used a little bit of lemon juice in the recipe. But I did put a piece of lemongrass in here just in memorial of the ones that I was exposed to first.
And so this last recipe, this is part of an upcoming cookbook that you have.
Yes, my new cookbook, Gluten Free Around the World, is coming out in 2 months. I'm really excited about that. And I basically took the same idea. Like I wanted, for Passover, I wanted to focus on things that people can eat. Like, okay, we can't eat pasta, we can't eat bread. What can we eat? And I took the same philosophy for gluten-free around the world. Like instead of creating a book that's like living with your disease, and like things that don't sound appetizing. I wanted to make a really fun, colorful, exciting book for people that are gluten-free so that they can focus too on things that they can eat instead of focusing on the things that they can't.
Have your travels influenced these particular dishes here?
Not necessarily the ones that we see here on the table, because I wanted to bring in 3 very traditional foods, and some of the book does focus on traditional foods because I find that Passover is an intimidating holiday for a lot of people, and they're nervous about cooking as it is, and it's not the time that they want to start experimenting with new food. So these are traditional classic recipes, I would say, but a lot of the recipes in the book are inspired from recipes around the world, like Jamaican jerk chicken and lavender mint roasted chicken, and all these different recipes that I've never ever seen growing up.
Right. Well, it smells amazing. It looks incredible. And thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here. It's so fun.
You can find recipes for some of the dishes you just saw on our Facebook page. When we come back, an imam in the Bronx shares his blessings with a group of elderly Jews. Finally from us, something very rare, a story about Muslims and Jews worshiping under the same roof. Producer Judith Escalona tells us more about the Islamic Center of North America, located in the Bronx.
This is one of the largest Muslim concentrated neighborhoods in the Bronx. Actually in New York City. In this particular community, we have so far 11 mosques that have opened up in the last 15 years.
Sheikh Musa Drame immigrated to the U.S. from Gambia, West Africa, 28 years ago. He is the founder and imam of the Islamic Cultural Center of North America. The sprawling center houses a Muslim school and a mosque, and more recently, a synagogue. Leon Bleckman has lived in this Parkchester neighborhood for 75 years. He was president of the Young Israel of Parkchester synagogue that served the Orthodox Jewish community for 70 years before it closed in 2004.
We had 7 synagogues. Every synagogue had services every day, 3 times a day. And the Young Israel of Parkchester had the main synagogue, and they had 2 social halls, which they used Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for services. And they were jammed. So jammed that they had standing room only.
That was then.
Hi, Percy.
Today, a small number of elderly Jewish men and women are what remains of the once thriving Jewish community of Parkchester.
As years went by, the older people passed away, and the younger ones moved to Riverdale. They moved to Long Island. They had their own homes in Long Island. They went to Yonkers, Westchester County. They went all over. They went out of the Bronx.
A shrinking revenue base caused Young Israel of Parkchester to sell its building and move to a storefront where they renamed themselves Beis Menachem of Parkchester. Eventually, the synagogue ran out of money and faced eviction.
At that particular time, this lady, whose name is Patricia Tamasulo, who is a Catholic, I may add, approached me and said, you have a big space, and we hold our political meetings here, and I'm working with these Jewish people that just lost their synagogue and they lost their storefront, and they really now don't have place to worship, and it's very sad. I said, no problem, let them come.
Everybody has a right to have a place to worship. And that's why I was friendly with Sheikh Musa Draman. It is a community building, and different groups were able to have meetings there because Musa has the biggest heart. He will not take money from the Jewish people. He will not take money from me. He will not take money from anyone because he believes that this is a gift. If you have the space, why not share it?
Have a good Sabbath.
So for the past 2 years, the Orthodox Jews of Beis Menachem of Parkchester Synagogue have been praying under the same roof as the devout Muslims of the Masjid Al-Iman Mosque, a historical first many, including Blackman, consider miraculous.
Out of this entire world, we are the only mosque and synagogue in the same building in this entire world, including Israel. It's the miracle of God.
Miracle or not, moving the synagogue to the Islamic Center had to be approved by Jewish authorities, who found nothing in the Torah forbidding it. That cleared the way for the Brooklyn-based Chabad Lubavitchers to provide a rabbi for the Sabbath and holidays. But allowing Jews to worship in the Islamic Center caused Sheikh Musa Draman to initially lose a large part of his Muslim congregation, though eventually they returned.
In the beginning, it was the war of ideology and belief, but later on, they began to say, wait a minute, because their minds are being opened up.
The Imam sees a future of inclusion for his community growing out of a simple act of kindness and making the idea of the family of man a reality.
To me, he's like a brother. Honest to goodness brother.
Judith Escalona, Independent Sources.
That's mine.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.